With the giant update for Termina right around the corner, now might seem like a weird time to look at the game's cut content. But I view this as an opportunity to see if anything makes it into the update. Besides, a lot of this hasn't been documented very well, and there's some pretty interesting stuff in here. I'll speculate on some things a bit, and tackle things in categories based on where they're located in the files. Don't be surprised if I miss some stuff, there's a lot of content. Also, expect spoilers. Let's start with the more well-known stuff, the items. Unsurprisingly, there's a lot of content Orange brought over from the first game to help work off of. After all, it's easier to copy an existing item and edit that, versus creating a new item entirely from scratch. So there's a lot of stuff in the code that was never intended to be used. Despite that, a number of items from the first game seem to have been seriously considered before being cut. This includes the red, orange, green, and purple vials, which have Termina-styled portraits. The Eclipse Talisman and Ancient Book also exist in the code, and are far enough from the other first game's items that they were probably planned to return. They didn't get sprites, though. The last unused item with a sprite is the 99 Eyes Mask, and it's the only functional one of the bunch. It grants an evasion and accuracy buff while worn, which is the only helmet to do so. It's clearly the skull that Rancid wears, so I'm convinced it's unused due to an oversight on Orange's part. It would make sense to drop from the Rancid rematch, but nope, he only drops the spears. The ballistic shield accessory was like this prior to an update, and funnily enough, it only got implemented after I messaged Orange myself asking if it was supposed to go unused. It only exists in the chest loot pool though, even though I imagine the shield is supposed to drop from elite troopers for obvious reasons. Granted, I did message about the 99 Eyes Mask, and that didn't change, so maybe he just decided against adding it. Or he forgot. Who knows, but please don't bug him about it, he's busy with the update. The remaining items don't have any sprites and exist in name only. Devil's Grass, Bacon and Eggs, Schematics, and a briefcase weapon. Devil's Grass was a mind restoration item that would have negatively impacted your accuracy, so perhaps other mind items were planned to have penalties. After all, it is kinda wild you can just shotgun trash vodka like it's nothing. Not much to say about Bacon and Eggs. The schematics are interesting though. It implies you found the recipes for Abella's weapons and traps at one point, instead of learning them through skills. Olivia's toxicology items were also included in that. It seems Tanaka's briefcase was intended to be a weapon. If he ever becomes playable, I imagine that'll be his starting weapon. An item called Brainflower Seed got cut. Yet another instance of something starting as an item before becoming a skill. Finally, there's a bobby head not in a sack, and an alternate version of the darkness armor without the magic stuff around it. There's a lot of cut skills in Termina. One of the most fleshed out entries was Premonition, which would have been part of Osa's skill tree. When used, it would show you a unique image depending on the time of day to help you find time-sensitive events. They ranged from when and where a contestant moonscorched, or some kind of confrontation like the one between Levi and Caligura on night 1. For the sake of pacing, I'll show the other premonition images near the end of the video. I can understand not giving it to Osa, but including it as part of Urge Tree would be pretty cool. Funnily enough, a similar skill called Sense Contestants did belong to Urge Tree. It probably became Reveal Aura, which shows moonscorched contestant locations on the map. Others included Bribe, which was a Caligura skill. It probably involved giving shillings while talking to a foe in battle for a variety of effects. Since most enemies have no use nor desire for money, this was a pretty silly idea and likely got reworked into Intimidation. I like to imagine this inspired the Persuade talk option when fighting him. Saint-Marie had greater blood magic to use certain skills more efficiently, and counter magic, both of which seem to be identical to their counterparts in the first game. They probably got removed to give Saint-Marie her own identity, although her two skills are pretty lame currently if you ask me. Third Eye was a Marina skill that granted 3 rev points at the start of a battle, likely removed due to being overpowered. Dash was a cut Karin skill. It was definitely removed for being too powerful. Rugged, handsome looks was a Tanaka skill. The description read, "The skill doesn't necessarily translate to everyone. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, after all." It was possibly another talk-type skill like Persuade or Intimidation. It might have also had different outcomes depending on who used it. I'd love to see Caligura's attempts at flirting fail miserably. Greater Analyze belonged to Dan, and the description implies it permanently analyzed an enemy type once used. So if you used it on one Moon-Scorched Ghoul, then you could instantly target the heads of all the others. Reverse Healing was another cut Dan skill, with the description indicate you would remove organs to deal damage to foes. No idea if that just meant body damage, or perhaps had a variable like Ruin in the first game that kills you if it gets too high. Order, Defend was a skill from Pov's tree. It would have allowed you to make your whole party guard in exchange for some mind. That actually would have been a nice addition. Bit of a shame it got cut. Resurrection was an Ulmer skill. Something tells me this is a joke skill like Inverse Crown of Thorns or Spontaneous Combustion. But who knows, maybe it was actually capable of reviving a fallen party member in combat and got removed for stealing Dan's gimmick. Father's Wrath is a skill with an image. Perhaps planned to be part of Marina's tree or a god spell. Who knows? The wiki claims Mark of Grogeroth was used to increase your affinity with him, but the actual skill has no code that I can see. Comment below if you have info, and I'll note it in the pin mistakes. Sword of Penance and Spear of Penance were cut skills. Probably just early names for the Blood Sword and Longinus. It does indicate the Longinus was initially going to be a regular Ulmer skill, though. There's also a version called Blood Spear, which pretty much confirms that theory. This one's a bit more speculation than normal. The Blood Spear image appears twice in the files, but one is called Blood Return. I'm convinced this was a skill that would let you teleport back to a blood portal. In terms of gameplay, I like the idea, but it probably would have detracted from the horror of the game. There's an unknown Hexen skill. Maybe just something to display unlocked New Game Plus stuff that never got added, but maybe something more was planned there. A skill creatively called Harm exists. It's just an image, so no clue what that would do. Maybe a Grogeroth spell. Needleworms was actually planned to return. It has an image. Thank God it didn't. There's a Pinecone Pig skill with the description, "Summon the deity of the good luck." The Pinecone Pig. It didn't belong to a certain skill tree, but I suspect it might have been an August skill given they're an Oldegard tradition. That or a Venushka skill. Who knows how it would have worked? Perhaps you exchange mind for a roll at the Pinecone slots. Given there's lots of infinite mind restoration in the game, it makes sense why that was cut. In the code, next to the New Game Plus logic skills, is one called Healing Link. There's no description, but it does target an ally, and was probably another New Game Plus ability. There's a number of unused enemies and different designs for foes that did make it into the game. The first one here got scrapped completely, despite being decently fleshed out. It was an enemy called Shapeless. But in the list of enemies, Shapeless is referred to as Cancer, so that may have been its name instead. I have no idea how it would have functioned or where it would have gone, but it had these two different sprites. In addition to that, it has an animation called Cancer 2, which functions if you fight it. It has similar motifs to Living Flesh, so it might have been part of Tunnel 1. A shame it was cut. I really like the design and animation. The dog face is creepy. On that note, Living Flesh has multiple scrapped sprites called Cancer Torso, Living Flesh 2, and Living Flesh 3 Rot. The Rot sprite used in-game is Living Flesh 3. This supports the connection to Shapeless, but who knows what that means. Weird this thing has so many variations. Neighbors have two unused battle sprites where their right arm is in a different position. I feel like this is a cut animation for their coin flip attack. Could just be unused designs, though. After all, one was featured in Orange's speed paint of the enemy. Father Hugo has multiple unused sprites, although most are largely identical to the end product. They have a variety of names like Father Trustworthy 1 and 2, Junior, and body parts called Marriage. Father Trustworthy 2 is notable as it depicts what was likely a marriage between Father Hugo and a cherub, given the face on his stomach is identical to one. Pretty dark. Rancid has cracked helmet sprites, implying the fight would have focused on destroying the helmet instead of attacking the rest of his body. That or more involved interactions were planned with it. There's an alternate Dan Pocket Cat design, probably just an earlier iteration of what we have now since it's basically just Dan in a mask. The gentleman initially had a very different design, with a pink vest, a more demonic face, and his bits hanging loose. Not very polite if you ask me. Fecal hounds were initially called boiled hounds and didn't have their poopy butts. There were versions of cherubs with wings, and the current version of the enemy's sprite is called a toddler. Perhaps both were supposed to exist at once, but that got scrapped. I could see the toddlers forming after you cut a cherub's wings. Don't know why you would do that though. The centaur has visual variants without the stitched-on guy in the back called Zebra, and one with a creepy face called Minotaur. There's an unused Rur design which had 4 small red eyes and generally just looked really underdeveloped. The Heartless one originally wielded the black steel instead of the red virtue. Meanwhile, the blade stabbed into Moonless is called red virtue in the files, so the items were swapped at some point in development. An Abella doppelganger exists, but it's just a head swap battle sprite. Olivia has an alternative doppelganger design where it's in a fleshy wheelchair. It looks really cool, but the creepiness of the current one running around is too good to give up. The platoon was originally called Spank Tank. The design was the winner of a Create an Enemy competition in the Discord, designed by Vlad's story. At one point, the fight would have taken place in the city during the day, as seen in an early screenshot. An early design of Needles without his hood thing exists. Beekeeper was called Mr. Doe earlier on. Shognar's sprites are all referred to as Big Boy in the files, so it was likely renamed during development. Poe's sprites are called Shy Guy in the files, implying another rename. Before the next category, here's something that doesn't quite fit in any of them. There's a bunch of unused status effects in Icon Set. There's one with crossed out eyes, possibly knocked out, what looks like a heavy bleeding status as a counterpart to Toxic, and a minor poison status. The last of those does exist in the code, where it would have removed 2% body a turn. Exciting. A depressed status is also in the code, but it literally does nothing. There's an unused shield icon for Perfect Guard, and an icon for debuffed evasion. But there's no icon for decreased accuracy, even though that is an enemy debuff. Finally, like the first game, there's icons for 5 stages of a fear debuff that doesn't exist. To my knowledge, anyways. With the status effects touched on, let's go through the Overworld sprites. A sheet of Dr. Keffer as a card dealer exists. Probably just an early version of the fortune teller, but it's funnier to assume it was a gambling game he did on the side. The sheeted horse in the museum may not have been covered originally. There's a shaded variant called Horse 1, while the one in the museum is Horse 2. There's also a Horse 3 which doesn't have a crown. It could also have been unused interactions with a creature. Perhaps you could take the crown and or sheet off at one point. Or they're just scrap designs. And it might be because they're both horses, but the Horse 4 image is the Centaur's Overworld sprite. I kind of love the idea of an option to remove the sheet on the horse, creating a centaur in harder difficulties only. There's a Rat Lady 2 Screaming sprite. This might be what the Rat Hag in the sewers by Tunnel 6 and 5 uses, but you can't really see it with the darkness effect if that's the case. Trooper 2-2 shows a Bremen Elite getting back up after death like a Bobby. They might have shared that reviving behavior at one point. In Percent Armor, there's sprites for a Knight NPC, one that looks very similar to a teaser for the upcoming update. So my point at the start does stand. Okay, after recording this, I went through Orange's YouTube page and found this video from 5 years ago. It was a Dark Souls 2D proof of concept thing. So that's where both the Mausoleum map and the Armored Guy sprite originate from. There's 2 others in the video I don't recognize though. The map used in the video is called Test, and not important, but I found the Armored Guy sprite in the Hexen map, which was funny. Percent heavy armor has a heavily armored ghoul. Perhaps there are ideas for stronger ghouls you could revive. They are pretty trash at the moment. Percent heavy armor 3 seems to depict a regular Bremen soldier instead of an elite. Percent yellow mage 2 crab contains a T-posing Osa. This is not a 3D game, so Orange had to go out of his way to draw this. I have no idea why it exists, no other character has it, but I love it. Here's a rotating version I cobbled together. Download link in the description, plus a complimentary explosion. Let the memes flow. In that vein, Demon Child has a buff man variant. It's just a slouch sprite, so I imagine it was going to be an inspectable dead body. It looks kinda goofy though. Each character has what looks like a fallen down sprite? That or it's a, cut sprite for a prison guard-esque cutscene. Harryman.png implies it was going to be a fully fledged enemy at one point. It has almost every overworld sprite necessary. Instead, they're only featured in that Hidden Forest event. The Decrepit Priest enemy was at one point intended to be a unique enemy rather than a generic one, as the sprite sheet is called Oscar. That matches the name of the priest in the Mayor's Manor. Granted, it could just be a holdover from the demo, where he really was the only decrepit priest. Police 1 shows an older design of the Bobbies, which resembles a stereotypical British police officer. Tormented 1 has a blobby mess of a sprite on the sheet. Perhaps a different summoning animation was planned, or this is some overworld death animation that got cut. All recruitable contestants have a sprite and animation identical to Osa's after being shot by August in Tunnel 1. Osa has extra wounded sprites with August's arrow stuck in him. We only see a few frames in-game. A couple even have him sitting while gripping the arrow, which makes me think a cutscene of the altercation taking place was planned. Instead, we only see the aftermath. There's 4 sprite sheets called Scared for some of the humanoid enemies, including 2 you can't recruit, and it's not used with killing intent. The tied up sprite sheet includes August. No other unplayable contestant has this. Perhaps a scrapped cutscene idea. In the demo of Termina, Black Olive and Marina had different portraits. There's probably other differences, but that would be better in a dedicated video that I'm not interested in making right now. And yes, I learned about the Marina one from this Reddit post. Thanks for the tip-op. There's a handful of unused books. Rather than reading them aloud, I'll give a summary while showing the text so you can pause to read it. The Doctor Notes is Dan's futile attempt to rationalize what's happening in Prehevil. Ryla Letter 1 contains some ominous thoughts from her. The Orders from the Vatican contains a brief message to Father Domek. Clearly unfinished. There's different text in the demo Gofa and Rare Skin Bibles. Studies of Almer 1 has an unused version with slightly different text. Dragool of Lyra is not technically a book, as the event only contains commented text, but it's formatted like one, so I'm putting it here. Naturally, there's a lot of cutscenes, dialogue, and interactions that went unused. The first of these is a complete sprite set for all 8 characters called Wounded. It was a significant part of the crucifixion scene that happens after losing to a decrepit priest. There's 24 sprites for all 8 characters crawling around naked on the floor. I'm not going to show that for obvious reasons, but this video from the No Commentary archive shows them moving around. They're blurred, but you can still mostly see them. I wonder if this was cut purely because you would then need a way to get your clothes back. Shame that many sprites are unused though. That was a lot of work. There's a few more cut events that No Commentary posted back in the day. Rather than having them all be cards in the video, check the pinned comment or description for a series of links to each. A giant exposition dump from Kaiser got cut. There's dialogue from the game's demo where Olivia finds both Marina and Levi attractive in Mind Read dialogue, included for the shippers. There's a cut event with Caligura falling asleep on the train bench with Mind Read dialogue, and some impossible to see dialogue at the start of the game. It even changes if you're Marco. One of cut demo dialogue from Karin, and current Mind Read text you can't see legitimately. And finally, Marina had a pretty huge cutscene removed where she reflects on the death of her father. In it, she's incredibly hard on herself and makes a self-destructive comment, revealing she's trans to the party. According to the comments, it was removed to avoid fueling claims that she isn't trans. She irrefutably is a transgender woman, as stated by Orange. It is not up for debate, and she deserves respect like anyone else. There's party talks on Dable Island, implying there was either an ability to visit before Night 3, or a different reason for going there than fighting the Valkyrie. This is further supported by day and evening battle backgrounds existing. The map is also called Devil's Island. Melting weapons is an event in the game's code. It has references to Termina-specific weapons, so it seems it was seriously considered at one point. POV has unique comments for all contestants upon leaving Tunnel 7, but only 4 are featured in-game. The missing ones are as follows. Olivia gets a backhanded compliment, Karin gets a comment about her death stare, Marco is insulted, and so is Osa. But Nasara fires back. There's a battle background for the White Bunker, which is identical to fighting a door, but with just a wall. Normally these have a hole for when the door is defeated and vanishes, so this is a strange outlier. A normal version does exist, weirdly. Maybe Orange considered copying the door mimics from Luigi's Mansion. There's 2 other battle backgrounds I think are unused, but I may be wrong. The checkered one isn't used in the Kaiser fight or in Prehevil Bob, so I'm not sure where else it would go. And the other is a dark wooden floor. An old version of the church basement exists, which has a pretty different layout. The 2 major differences are that there's no winged statue holding the effigy, and all of the Crimson Fathers are in the room to the left of that. In the used version, they're spread out across the map. And I know the statue seems to be missing on both, but we know it's present from these 5 extra event tiles. That's just how Orange gets multi-tile interactables to work. An unused map called Praha 1 exists. It blends elements of the shopping district and central Prehevil. There's other unused test maps, but they aren't really worth showing if you ask me. It seems Orange has considered giving Marina a talking board as a starting item. Neat idea, but I doubt he will follow through on it. At last, here's all the premonition images I promised back to back. This last section isn't technically cut content, but it's stuff that's really obscure or hard to see in-game. There's a super hidden chest in the forest above the shrine thing. On the same map, below the shrine and past the walls, is a clearing with some extra mushrooms, nettles, a chest, and an ambush with 2 owl cultists. You can harvest the lavender plants by the entrance to Tunnel 1, despite none others acting this way. Probably an oversight since there's no sprite to go with it. There's this obscure hidden area by Tunnel 1 with a death pit, a green herb, and a mushroom. You access it over by this tree. It contains nothing else. If you find a lighter, which is only obtained from chests, it serves as an infinitely reusable match, and can be given to Marina as a birthday gift on day 3. She won't accept it, but there's unique dialogue if you try. Here's a better look at the beautiful background atop the tower, which has 3 variations. On that note, here's a blank version of Ending B's beautiful image. I'd kill to have this as a poster. The image EK21 makes the connection between Logic's cables and the veins in the Rur dimension very explicit. Maybe that's obvious, but I never noticed it. You can kind of see Ryla in Logic's chambers when it opens up, but an animation gets in the way. Here's her unobstructed chibi sprite. If you go in the back of the shop and wait a bit, Dr. Keffer has an animation where he removes his Groucho Marx glasses to clean them, revealing he has no eyes. I tried recording it, but he refused and just kept jerking it instead. You can walk around the Hall of Gods freely, but it's hard to see anything in the darkness. So here's the full thing. I like that a platypus ascended to godhood. Can't wait for the 3-hour lore video on the significance of that. Finally, since this has been a goose chase in the community at the time of writing, I'll touch on it. Orange mentioned an undiscovered secret in Termina. It's small and only interesting given the context. This prompted an interesting search effort, and I suggest checking out Orangeposting's video theorizing what it was. They found some neat stuff. The true answer turned out to be the grass getting darker sometime after the Iki torso dies. A little interesting, but I like the other discoveries that came up from the hunt better. So that's most of Termina's unused content in one video. I probably missed some bits and bobs, but nothing huge, I imagine. Let me know if there's anything interesting I missed, and I can note it in the pinned mistakes. Once the big update has been out for a while, I'll consider a follow-up. Thanks to a Dark Raccoon for the censor mod, and the Fear and Hunger wiki editors. You all made this video a lot easier. The rest of the video is just a quick channel update. I set up a Patreon in addition to a Ko-fi. Throw me $1 for your name and photo in the credits, plus access to some of my photography. Learn the secret Quackers lore. And my next video will be something very different and very unexpected. It will be a bit polarizing, but I hope you'll give it a chance. Afterwards, the Funger will resume. As always, I'd appreciate any support, but regardless, have a good day or night, viewer.